Should have used catfish in the fourth game. I'm sorry you were embarrassed on national television in front of millions of people, and I'm sorry that each one of you lost the bonuses and World Series money, not to mention the untold other monies you could have gotten in commercial endorsements. I'm sorry. I let you down. It won't happen again.
Yeah, you bet it won't, Coach.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week, we're talking about Season 2, Episode 5, with host Steve Martin and musical guest Kinky Friedman. This episode originally aired on October 23rd, 1976. Brad?
What up, Kinky? Hey, I gave you that Steve Martin face. If only this was a video podcast. I forgot I gave you that. Hey, Steve.
I know. So, former Smothers Brothers show writer Steve Martin is the host this week.
That's a good intro. True. All true. Emmy award-winning writer for the Smothers Brothers, Steve Martin. Yes.
That is also true. Yeah. His first episode.
Yes. It's funny looking back. This is a very monumental episode for the show because it's, Steve Martin's first episode hosting of 16 times.
Yeah.
But this was it. This was number one.
It's kind of crazy, too, when you watch the show as a whole. Mm-hmm. There aren't as many memorable sketches from this episode as in my mind there were. This is not the episode you think of when you think of Steve Martin's Saturday Night Live. Sure. But also, I mean, he's hosted so many times. They're not all going to be excellent episodes. This is a good and weird episode, I would say. It's so hard and unfair to kind of judge this episode because, as you just said, this is a guy who's hosted so many times. Right. He hosts 3 times alone in season 3. Yeah. But I think it's more apropos, to talk just like of who he was at this time and like who, Steve Martin at this time, as opposed to who Steve Martin will become 12 or even 6 months from this point. Right. Yeah. So let's talk about that because I introduced him as the writer from the Smothers Brothers, which he was, but that was a few years prior to this. So where 60s. Was Steve Martin now in 76? Okay, so Smothers Brothers was 69, which, as we said, he wrote for and won an Emmy. Oddly enough, his only Emmy, writing the Smothers Brothers. He went on and wrote for the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, which he was also nominated for an Emmy. But so at this point, he had written the shows we talked about. He was also writing a show at this time called Van Dyke and Company. Yep. Which was another like primetime variety show, which was also nominated and actually won the Emmy this year for variety show, which on that show was Andy Kaufman's primetime debut. And also, do you know who else was on that show, Van Dyke and Company, Gary? No. Guests on that show? Enlighten me. The Lockers. Really? Yes. Smart move. Yeah. But Steve Martin, performing wise, stand up, I mean, he had been on The Tonight Show, obviously, at this point with Johnny Carson a few times. His first time as a stand up on that was 1972. So he's been on Johnny a few times. He's been on Midnight Special, but he's not like yet Steve Martin, like capital S, capital M, Steve Martin. He's one of the hottest stand-ups at the time. But again, this is the 70s, so it's not like he hadn't done any specials yet. He hasn't had any albums out yet. So he's known as a stand-up and his, talk show appearances, but he's definitely like on the rise. Yeah. I mean, you can tell even from his monologues in the show, he's got the one nailed, and then that really becomes a big chunk of Let's Get Small. Yeah. His first album. But even his second monologue, when he comes back, you can see he's like working through things in there and just how smart even then his comedy was. I mean, he's just so good as a stand. I mean, I think people forget, especially now, like Steve Martin was an amazing stand-up. Yeah. He's just so smart and so good. Oh, yeah. It was so fun to go back and see this again. And in watching this, I went back and watched like some old Carson appearances and stuff. It's just so funny to watch him as a stand-up. Oh, it's so good. And he's so fast, and he just like moves from one thing to the next and like keeps it rolling the whole time. It's amazing.
He does so much in such little time.
Yeah. It's so good.
And then, Steve Martin has a very interesting history, I think, to the history of the show, which I think some people do or do not know. But and we talked about it a little bit, I think, in season 1, but 1974, when Dick Ebersol gets hired by NBC, his main job was to find a show to replace Johnny Carson reruns on Saturday.
Yep.
And one of the early ideas he had was to do a comedy show, but one of his first ideas was to have a revolving set of hosts. And this was before Lorne Michaels really kind of came into the fold. And one of the first ideas he had was a show kind of centered around having Pryor on, Richard Pryor. And from Pryor, they had Lily Tomlin and George Carlin. And oddly enough, the fourth name that had come up at that time was Steve Martin. And he still wasn't, obviously this was a year and a half prior to this. And I think one of the reasons why his name came up was one of the writer-producers of that Richard Pryor idea show was Bob Einstein.
Yeah.
Who wrote with Steve on the Smothers Brothers. So I think that may be one of the reasons why his name came. The fact that he also was a young and up-and-coming hip stand-up comic at the time.
They also lived together for a short time when they were writing on the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, yeah. But basically, then the short story is Richard Pryor pulls out because he realizes NBC will never let him be Richard Pryor, no matter what time you put him on TV. And when he pulls out, the show kind of falls apart. And then Lorne Michaels comes in and we get Saturday Night Live. But there was kind of this inkling in the origin story of what would become Saturday Night and then Saturday Night Live that Steve Martin was kind of, in that sphere of conversations.
Yeah.
Another thing that's kind of interesting or funny about this is he wasn't a lock to host this show. Again, because as we said, he wasn't the big superstar that he will become in very short time. But even he said he thought that Lorne was reluctant to hire him or book him as a host. Jane Damanian has said in the oral history book, she really was the one who pushed, who knows how much that's true, but she's the one who pushed Lorne to book him on the show because Lorne didn't want to. And after hearing this, I was thinking about it. He's really the first peer of Saturday Night to host. Lily was established.
Sure.
George Carlin obviously was established. Richard Pryor was established.
Ron Nesson was established.
Rob Reiner might have been their age, but he was on a successful TV show for years. Like Steve was up and coming, I think very on the same trajectory, if not honestly, maybe a little lower than the show at this point, as far as national consciousness.
Sure. Yeah. At this point, probably.
At this point.
Yeah.
So, I think it was interesting of the show wanting to get somebody kind of on their level at the same time.
Yeah.
Taking that journey together.
Sure. Because to your point, he's on, 4 months later, and he's in a much different place then.
Oh my God. And by the time he shows up in season 3 is even, this guy's, the trajectory he is on, he is about to explode.
Sure.
Everywhere. Yep. And I don't want to talk too much about, because obviously we have a lot more Steve Martin episodes to talk about, but a week after this show, he tapes what will be his first special, HBO special On Location, which is only the 8th one they ever did. But he records this literally the Saturday after this show. And then next year he records his first album. And then it's just, everything's snowballing and he's like the biggest thing in the country.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? To think like, oh, you hosted SNL one week and then you film your special the following week.
Can you imagine those 2 weeks? Yeah. Oh my God. That's insane.
That's crazy.
Regardless, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot, he just fits in so seamlessly to this show.
Yeah.
People say it about Buck a little bit, but I think they say it more about Steve because he's in the same kind of age range, but that people thought he was in the cast at one point. Like people who don't know SNL or are casual fans thought Steve Martin was actually in the cast of Saturday Night Live in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, should we get into it?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Let's do that again.
Why?
Because you were like,
oh, they're shocked I was drinking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So the cold open starts. The cold open starts in the locker room of a baseball team, the Yankees, with their like off-brand Yankees apparel, which I thought was funny. It's totally the wrong blue, but whatever.
It's fine.
So the Yankees had just lost the World Series
Crushingly.
badly.
Yeah, badly.
Swept by the Reds, the big red machine, whatever. We're not going to talk about baseball. And Dan is standing on a stool as the manager trying to apologize to the guys about.
You already know where this is going. Exactly.
Oh, it's telegraphed from the start. But it's
pretty sure O'Donohue had written this piece, but yeah.
So he's talking about how he's sorry that they didn't get their World Series bonuses and all the money that would have come with endorsements had they won the World Series. The team leaves, and then the stool is kicked out from under him, and he's left hanging.
The team, it's three guys. It's John, Chevy, and Garrett is the team.
Oh, that's all we got.
They could have brought in Zweibel, Franken, and Davis, O'Donohue.
Right?
No. There's three dudes.
And Zweibel and O'Donohue are in the show a lot.
They
didn't bother to put them in here.
No.
And then Chevy slides in, so there's no fall. This is the first time we see.
I think I interrupted you. Did I interrupt you when they get up and leave and Chevy kicks the stool out from under him?
Yes.
You see his body dangling, and then, Chevy slides in, right?
Yeah, it was pretty short. It was different. I mean, it's different than other cold opens have been to this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was short and sweet. It did what it had to do. There's the little shit like where they have a side and you're missing a third of the set, like falls off into blackness at one point. It's like, come on, guys.
They're still in Brooklyn.
They are in Brooklyn. It did feel kind of weird, though, having Chevy give the line live from New York, but not do the fall. Like have him slide in and do it.
Well, he slid in. It was weird.
It was weird. And I mean, I've been saying this for 3 weeks now. They could have played it better with letting somebody else do it.
Oh, he's not going to give that up until he's gone.
No, I know. But Dan is, in theory hanging. Like he could have fell from the top of the frame down.
Right.
And then popped up and said live from New York. Just something.
Yeah, sure.
It just felt a little weird. But yeah, whatever. Short and sweet.
Yeah,
it worked.
Short and
In
sweet.
general, it worked. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, then we go to our monologue, which again, which is Steve Martin as a stand-up is phenomenal.
I mean, after I got past my annoyance of wondering why there were tables and chairs set up behind him on home base, I was so pissed. Right? The first thing I saw, he walks down. I'm like, why is there all this shit on home base already?
But not even the chairs are on top of the tables as if the restaurant's closed for the night and they're going to come in and sweep the floor.
That's true.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah. But once I got past that, here's fucking golden Steve Martin.
Yeah. And it was great. It's basically his Open to the Let's Get Small album.
Yeah. I mean, it's his tried and true stand-up routine. I mean, this is a dude who's been, honing this act for years, and you can
tell.
This is just somebody owning the stage, and it's what he does. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Are we on? We are. Okay. To open the show, I always like to do one thing that is impossible. So right now, I'm going to suck this stool into my lungs. Oh, darn. Okay. Well, here's something you don't often see. Okay, a lot of people come to me and they say, Steve, how can you be so damn funny? Well, I'm kind of getting out of the comedy thing now, getting more into the music, so I'd like to do a banjo tune for you right now. Here we go. Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't deserve it. All right. Is it free to get in? It's free? Okay. Get your money's worth on this? Okay, it doesn't matter if it's free to get in, whatever. We're on network, big show. You're expecting to see a professional show, so let's not waste any more time. Here we go with professional show business. Let's go. Hey!
It's really great to be here. And here. And here. It was great.
Remember what it was like being back here? Literally does a spit take for jokes, takes a drink of water and spits to the side. And, it's like when he's playing the banjo, he's like, can't play a depressing song on the banjo, can you?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and then of course works his way up to the excuse me, which
yes,
big reaction and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's if you have a stand-up comedian doing a monologue, this is what you want. Them just slaying for 6-7 minutes.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
of course. I think it's, if not my favorite monologue, it's one of my top 2 or 3. Yeah, that we've seen so far.
Okay, I want to do this last banjo tune, and we'll move on with the show. Can I get like a tight shot, maybe on the fingers on this, okay? Dave Olson, the director. I'd like to start off with the tight shot, okay? I did this thing in dress. I thought we had it worked out. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Okay, I do something else then. I can go with it. All right, you know what I'm saying? It's just, you know, you ask for something, you think you're going to get it, throws you off when you're a performer professional like I am. And I'm sorry if I look a little angry, but I guess I am because, you know, it hurts you. You know what I'm saying? It hurts the people who are watching the show when me, the artist, comes out here and I can't get a little cooperation. You know what I mean? I mean, I can't get a little help from the backstage crew. Excuse me.
Right. Yes.
As a traditional monologue, yes, one of the best.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
As a traditional commercial take, I'm not sure I loved the next bit. Although it was funny. It's Chevy filming a milk commercial as himself.
Actor Chevy Chase.
And every time he says something about milk, he starts bringing up the bad qualities
Something
about
bad.
milk.
Yeah.
Like it causes high cholesterol, mucus, something.
Leaves flaky white things in the corner of your mouth.
And then they have to do another take every time. And it's just a series of this joke, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, something like that.
We'll try it again. Just like
Okay, I'm sorry, right?
Take 32.
Actor Chevy Chase speaks out for milk.
You know, my body's just about the most important thing to me. And I care about what I put into it. That's why I drink fresh, whole milk at least 3 times a day. It gives me quick energy, helps me to look and feel younger, and increases the serum cholesterol in men who drink too much of it.
Take 33.
Actor Chevy Chase speaks out for milk.
You know, a lot of times I'm out for dinner, my date will order a beer or a liquor drink or something like that, or her date or her friend's date or something like that, you know, and they're ordering. And then a waiter comes to me, he says, so what'll it be, you know? And I just sort of smile and pop right up and say, milk, please. You know why? Because I know that a single glass of delicious, ice-cold milk in the summer can give you a quick heart attack if you drink it too fast. That's right.
34.
You know, it's funny. It's quick. It's evidence of them in Brooklyn, small.
Yeah.
Single, minimal set, one to camera. Yeah.
My favorite line from this was Don Pardo at the end. He says, milk, it's the delicious natural drink that's not filling, but is fattening. That was it.
It's an interesting way to start the show, you know, after the monologue.
Yeah. Not as interesting as the next bit, though. Jeopardy 1999
Yeah.
with host RF114.
This is the first game show, right? We haven't seen one before.
That's what I wrote in my notes, and I was going to ask you the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's literally Jeopardy taking place in 1999.
Yeah.
Like I said, the host is RF114, played by Steve Martin. But Don Pardo is still the announcer in 1999.
My second note is that it's hilarious that it's still Don Pardo
Yes.
doing the announcing. Yeah.
And he even calls him Don Pardo. Don Pardo, who's our first
like 18
contestant?
times he calls him Don. It calls him by name. Yeah, it was great.
Did you notice the reaction when Lorraine was introduced? Like the crowd
No.
just was louder for her than for
Really?
anyone else. And I don't know why. Like,
I liked how she looked. She looked really good because they're all wearing
Yeah.
kind of weird white poofy wigs, like kind of like cotton top wig kind of things, and poor man's Star Trek.
I was just
uniform.
going to say, I just felt like they were left over from the Star Trek
so they all
sketch.
look weird, but I do remember her looking good. So maybe that's what it was. Like she was kind of put together the best. She didn't look as thrown together as the other guys.
Yeah.
So Steve's playing the host, and the contestants are Dan, Lorraine, and I don't know. It's always interesting when Chevy's in a sketch because it doesn't happen that often. Like an actual sketch, not a straight to camera or pitch man or weekend, but an actual sketch. So I was excited for that. It's always fun to see.
Yeah. And then we play Jeopardy. I mean, it's a Jeopardy that takes place in 1999. So there's one joke about, you know, like the population declined after this law in 1982 was passed. What is baby killing? Who's the first man cloned? Fran Tarkenton.
Who was the first president to kill himself while in office. They get a good Gerald Ford joke.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was fun. It was a game show. Like you said, it's their first game show.
Yeah, you say this kind of very offhandedly. I think this is a great sketch.
Oh, no, I do too. Don't get me wrong. I loved this.
Yeah, like, I don't want to underplay this. This is a really smart sketch. I feel, aside from the obviously dated references, because you're writing it in 76 and you're guessing about the future, but like the bones of this sketch would work today as if we tried to guess the next 30, 40 years.
I mean,
it's really funny. It's really smart. And now it's just fun to watch in hindsight of like the jokes they make in the future, which are now all past.
Right. This is like, Conan O'Brien doing in the year 2000 bits, right?
I mean, and the big joke everybody remembers from this sketch is the infamous Chevy dig.
Okay, now, Larry Lee, we're running out of time on this.
Okay, TV for 50,000, please.
TV for 50,000. Comedian whose career fizzled after leaving NBC Saturday night. I'm sorry, it took too long on that. The correct answer is, who was Chevy Chase? Chevy Chase. There's the bell telling us it's time for Final Jeopardy. Now, that Final Jeopardy category is assassinations. Now, remember, contestants.
All three of them, including
all
Chevy,
three of them
all
like,
look confused.
Yeah.
They don't know. They can't remember.
It's like, who is Chevy Chase? And then the camera goes to Chevy. He's like, I don't know who that is.
It's still funny. It plays really well.
It's hilarious.
The whole sketch is great. Even there's a great, Steve messes up at one point, and even he's funny when he messes his lines up. Like he's able to turn it into a joke, kind of a la Chevy does. And they do a funny bit near the end before Final Jeopardy. This is my only kind of knock on this sketch, I would say, is they kick it to Don Pardo about what will they win.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of funny jokes about, what you're going to win and stuff in the future kind of thing. But it goes on too long. It definitely goes on a little too long. The jokes are funny. And if you cut it in half, it would have been perfect. It's the only thing I would say. But what I love most about this sketch is you get Steve in as a host. Mm-hmm. In theory, there's not a lot for him to really grab onto. But he plays the character so well.
Yeah.
He fits into this sketch so well. Like, this is an example why you might think he was a cast member, because he just seamlessly plops into this sketch. Very much, like a Buck Henry or an Elliot Gould. Probably better than Elliot Gould.
I was going to say better than either of them, really.
I think it's the age thing.
Yeah.
It just adds so much. And that's what's great, aside from the writing and how much fun this sketch is and how funny it is. But watching Steve just seamlessly get in there is awesome.
Yeah. It was great. And to your point, like the costumes, while they looked a little weird and like cheap Star Trek knockoffs, I loved that they had these weird wigs and like everyone had them. Yeah, it was interesting. It was fun. It's a great sketch.
I forgot how good it was. It's really good.
Me too. I also, because I appreciated it so much, I also didn't realize it was almost 8 minutes.
No way.
Long.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I only went back and looked at that because I was like, it was long.
Well, then it kind of makes sense. Then what comes next? Because again, I don't know why I keep harping, but it's like, here comes a musical act after really one real sketch. But, there was a long monologue. And if that sketch was that long, you're a good half hour into the show then at least. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I only knew Kinky Friedman to be your stage name. So is this where you got that stage name?
If I would have done my research, I would have said my stage name was one of the other guys from his Texas Jew boy band, but I didn't do enough research. Well, you know more Kinky Friedman than I do.
He comes on to sing the song Dear Abby, which apparently is in reference to his friend, Abby Hoffman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Kinky Friedman is, according to his official website, he is an author, singer-songwriter, humorist, and governor of the heart of Texas.
Asterisk, not an elected title.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he had released a couple albums before this. He toured with Bob Dylan earlier that year with the Rolling Thunder Review, which, I mean, granted, he literally was picking people up off the side of the road to tour with him on that tour. So whatever. But but no, he toured with Dylan, and then he had the song, Dear Abby is from an album he had that year, which I'll give him credit. Lasso from El Paso. Not a bad album title. I thought it was interesting again, 2 weeks in a row that the musical guest is, a singer songwriter who just has to sit with a guitar.
Yeah.
On that little center stage, like with a spotlight with black all around him. Like, It's like, hey, here's 2 weeks in a row. We don't want to show off the place. So let's just get a guy to sit by himself.
And my initial thought looking at this was, oh yeah, they're doing this because they're in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And then I remembered that next week they have the band. So I'm intrigued by that.
All right. We spent enough time on Kinky Friedman. We spent more time than Saturday night spent on
Kinky
Friedman.
We have to give him his due because they only gave him this one song to play.
Which, I don't know. Did I need another one? No. It's fine. I think I got all of Kinky Friedman in this performance.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying only one song struck me as odd.
Why are we still talking about him?
I don't know, but I feel like
no, I didn't. I tried.
No, this
to
time,
move on already.
This time was not you.
Yeah, Jesus, come on.
Anyway, his sparkling jacket.
There we go. Here we go. I purposely skipped that note because I just wanted to move on. But I did have nice get up as my last note.
Well, God. We're on to Weekend Update already. This show is just flying by. Woof. So we have another Weekend Update. I don't know. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was a killer update.
Well, I feel like now that we've moved past Jeopardy 99, you can't keep putting the Steve Martin face up.
Okay.
For everyone who can't see, is Gary has a life-size face of Steve Martin that I gave him a couple of years ago that he keeps throwing in front of the camera. Now that we've moved past Jeopardy 99, I feel like every sketch is going to start with, this wasn't killer. But anyway, no, a Weekend Update, it was I agree. I mean, it's fine. It's the usual stuff, decent open by Chevy. It's interesting to note here, this is where they do the debate jokes.
Yeah.
The third Ford Carter debate. And I think most of it is because the debate happened the day before and they just didn't want to try to make a sketch up in 24 hours.
Right.
They're joking about Poles, and he says the Poles are an independent, autonomous people that I don't believe consider themselves to be under the Soviet rule. That was a joke from the second debate that they made fun of a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, there was a Chairman Mao bit that was a little. Anyway, we'll skip that.
Yeah, like it's ho hum. It's not the worst update we've seen.
No,
and it's not the best. Which I feel like for this episode is par for the course. It's just very kind of above average, slightly above average.
Yeah.
The still to come was, has to be O'Donohue or children from Thailand signing up for school. Like, holy crap. That's like Lampoon O'Donohue right there.
Yeah.
And we get a commercial, which none of us like, but I always like the fact if you're going to do a commercial during Weekend Update, you get points for doing it live and you get more points for having the host in it.
And this time they have a live animal, so that's more points.
Two animals.
That's right. Yeah, it's a commercial for the Phytoflex, the digital watchdog. So it's a Steve with a big German Shepherd
asking, "Do you long for a German Shepherd that can tell time?" It's so silly.
Yeah, it's funny, and he's really good in this character. I mean, we see him do it a few times where he's just like the smiling salesperson. It's funny.
It's a nice contrast to a Dan Pitchman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's way more absurd. So this dog has, you push this piece and tells you the time. This one tells you the date. It's yeah.
Well, this German Shepherd is like strapped with like 7 things on him. And then poor bastard, they can't even like do the right close-ups at the right end when they say, "Oh, they're going to show you the date and it's the time." It's like, guys, come on, this poor dog.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. It wasn't a great sketch. It was absurd.
Yeah, it's just something silly and fun and like whatever. Like I said, you're going to do a commercial live with the host? Sure, why not? Go for it.
Right. And then Gilda comes out with a Phytoflex for ladies, which is just a poodle that she's holding.
It's so stupid.
It is. And then we come back for the second half of Weekend Update where Jane comes on and Chevy introduces her, having replaced him for the 3 weeks. And she comes on What does she even talk about? I didn't write this down.
Oh, it doesn't matter because she sits down and I'm like, oh, he's going to do the faces bit.
Yeah.
She starts talking about whatever it was. It's something with a P, I feel like. But anyway, and then, yeah, sure enough, he starts doing the faces behind her and the crowd's eating it up.
Fluorocarbons. Yeah.
Silent P.
Sure. I think it's an F, but that's fine.
It's like, okay, here's an old bit, whatever.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, then. From there, we go to...
Wait. Are you going to pass over what was probably the best joke of Weekend Update?
The David Bowie joke?
No. When he's reading the article and Al Franken just walks out.
Oh, yes.
Like drinking milk from the carton and I think eating a donut. And he's
eating a sandwich.
Yeah. And so Chevy's reading the news and Al Franken just walks out and kind of stops behind him and looks down. And Chevy looks up and just says, do you mind? I don't like people reading over my shoulder. And then Al's like, oh, okay, sorry. And he just turns and walks away.
Yes.
And Chevy drops the paper and goes, like, it's the most bizarre and random thing, but it's hilarious. Like, this is why I love this season 2 is it's these kind of stupid random things they will do that are funny that they won't do once the show gets big and popular. And it was like, yeah, no rhyme, no reason. Maybe you remember who Al Franken is because he's only been done like one Franken and Davis so far.
Yeah.
In season 1. So it's just like, here's a random guy who just walks onto this set.
And Chevy made it look like he did not expect it. And then Franken walks off and he even looks off camera and is like, makes a face and then just like drops the paper in front of the desk. It's strange.
The whole thing, the performance of the two of them, it's all great. It's really funny. And then just goes back to doing whatever, a couple news items and then we're out of that.
Then we're out of there.
But yeah, that was the best thing we can update.
That was the best thing. You're right. Yeah. What's not the best thing?
Oh. You know what? It's funny because I wasn't sure how you were going to go after this next sketch because I feel like it could go either way.
I feel like it could have gone either way. Yes, I agree with that. So it's Plato's Cave, which is a 50s beatnik bar. And there's like a voiceover in Chiron that comes on to talk about the beatniks and whatever and how they would perform for one another. And it starts with O'Donoghue and Jane talking to one another at a table, smoking cigarettes. And
they're in the audience of this club. Yeah.
Right. And then Dan, I really enjoyed Dan's performance here. He plays a crazy beatnik with bongos, and he basically is the MC of the show, and he just is introducing everyone.
Right.
But he has this crazy, like, hey, all right, man, next we're going to have blah, blah, blah. And he's just typical, like, crazy Dan, but I loved it.
Oh, we should say this is the reason all the shit was on home base during the monologue, because this Plato's Cave takes place. And it is over the entirety of home base, but it takes place on home base.
This is by far the largest set we've seen in Brooklyn.
Yeah, but it's home base.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. It's totally home base.
To your point, that's why they did this on home bases, because they weren't building big sets. So, like, this is our one big set.
Yep.
Bring out the tables, boys.
Well, Chevy comes out first as Juan Kutner.
We can't do this.
You want to go through all of them?
They bring out every cast member
comes out,
and Steve
and
Martin.
Garrett, John, Lorraine. The only one who doesn't perform is Gilda, who plays the waitress, and Jane, who plays the patron.
But they're still there.
They're still there. No, the whole cast is in this spit.
Yes, everybody's in it. Yes. I will give them credit for that, which is always fun to see. Chevy comes out first, and I noticed it, and I started getting the feeling they're really trying to give the audience Chevy, because the show knows he's out. Like, I don't know how well known it was in the public that Chevy's leaving, but he had the milk thing. He's in the Jeopardy sketch. This episode seems very Chevy heavy this first half, which I'm not saying in a bad way. It's just noticeable that you're getting Chevy in a lot of sketches, which you normally wouldn't get.
All right.
Yeah. And I got to say, Steve, as he's done in every sketch he's in, he commits. Like, he's in everything he does, he is committed as this beatnik poet. He does a great job. You buy his vibe. He has a really great bit where he's like going off on his rant. He forgets his line. He kind of almost breaks character for half a second and looks over his shoulder and gets into the book and then gets the note and then jumps right back into it.
But he forgets how many zooms he has to, like, he's saying zoom, zoom, zoom. And then he turns and looks at his book and comes back. He's like, zoom. Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, they bring Garrett out. And then after Garrett's done, my note was, I was like, this feels way too long. And I worry they're still going to bring out John.
Oh, and they did.
And they did. And they bring out like...
And John does his Brando impression. He works that into the bit.
For no reason.
Yeah, and then Lorraine comes out and it gets really weird.
You know what they should have done to end this? They should have brought out Franken and Davis. But as Franken and Davis, like not as beat guys.
No, as soon as you said that, that's exactly what I thought.
Like that would have been fun. So, I mean, this sketch is what, 26 minutes long? How long is this sketch? 32?
12.
It's so
12
goddamn.
plus.
Does that include the credit sequence? Because Is It a Sketch wasn't long enough. Then they do, which the idea is funny. They do kind of a Where Are They Now credit sequence of some of the performers and people in the audience. And it is a funny joke of like where all these beatniks where they went in their life. But
none of them were funny. Like, that's the only
funny.
but
I thought they were funny, and I liked the idea. I did think some of them were funny. The idea of it I thought was funny. It just was...
The idea of it, maybe.
Just so long. And it had moments like Chevy was good.
Chevy was decent.
You know, Garrett was pretty good. John had moments. O'Donoghue has a great line after Steve's done where he turns to Jane. He goes, I prefer his haikus.
Yes.
It's kind of a funny line.
And like Jane's character, I like Jane's character too, because the whole time, like, she's trying to be intellectual and
Yes.
he says something about haikus and she's like, I don't like Japanese films or something like that. Like, yeah.
The thing that I think really hurts this sketch is it's just so long.
Yeah.
And it's hard because on the other hand, you get the whole cast. So how do you not get everybody involved but have it not be so long? And that's why I feel like this is a sketch where some people I could see how people would really like this sketch because they don't mind the length and they like what it's doing. I also don't think it helps that I'm talking about this in 2023, so far removed from remembering or knowing beatniks. No, seriously. You know what I mean? Like even in 76, it's been a while. So I think that obviously has to do with it. So it's interesting. I feel I could see how people really like this sketch, but it was just way too long.
Well, I think each of the performances were too long. All of them were just too, like, if you had cut all of those in half, I don't think it would have felt too long. That's all.
John's could have been a cool something else, like its own sketch, you know, that character. And Lorraine's character was so bizarre. Like they all worked on their own. It just was adding them up to whatever it was, 39 minutes. It was just way too much.
We see Lorraine's double jointed shoulders.
She comes out with that really weird thing with her hands wrapped arms back or behind her head on her. Like it was amazing. But then they did something horrible, which I thought was a sin. They cut to a side angle. So you couldn't like see and appreciate what she was actually doing with her body because it was, yeah. Anyway. It's such a polarized. I don't know. Like I said, there's so much good things in it, and it was written by Ann Beats and Rosie Schuster. So I mean, it's a smart sketch. It's saying stuff. It's commenting on things. Like there's a lot there. I think it's just too long. I mean, if that would have been half the length, I think I would have been like, this is brilliant.
Did you think that they could have cut this shorter and made our next sketch Looks at Books longer?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
No, I was, yeah. God damn it. Looks at Books. I was so excited to see. I don't know if I have been as excited watching these episodes as I was at this point when I saw the Looks at Books logo.
Yeah. And
I was praying it was Jane, and then Jane came up, and I was so excited.
Yeah.
But like we've been saying, this is not a horrible sketch.
No. It's just not a home run.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I see what you did there with this home run. And
Got it. Okay. Baseball. Yeah.
Good. Nice work.
So thank you. Steve Martin comes on as
some dude.
I didn't write his name down. Yeah.
Some dude.
Talks about the book he wrote called Sports and Sex, which looks at abstention and sports performance. And my favorite joke of this was Jane was, oh, did you talk to athletes? Did you talk to doctors or whatever? And he's like, no, my approach was different. I used binoculars.
That's very interesting. How was this study done?
I employed a strict scientific method using over 500 athletes, one half of whom did have sex prior to sports and the others did not. Now, this, of course, was all done in complete confidence.
Did you use anonymous questionnaires like Kinsey, or did you conduct private conversations like Masters and Johnson?
No, I employed a different kind of method involving binoculars and spending many hours across the street from the subject's window.
Oh, I see. Your book deals with all sports?
Yes, it does.
And since this is the World Series time, I was especially interested in your chapter called Base on Balls.
And the whole concept is that athletes perform better when they abstain from sex. And then they show some clips of baseball players dropping some balls. And then he talks about how long they had gone with or without having sex.
You know, it was weird. When they started going to the clips,
yeah,
for some reason, I thought they were just going to show clips of the Yankees messing up the World Series. That's where I thought this was going.
Yeah.
Which I was wrong. And then, yeah, they show these film clips of guys hitting home runs and being successful by abstaining. And then they show the errors caused by various levels. You know, this is a guy who had sex last week. This is a guy who got teased before the game. And my favorite one was they show a pitcher and he hits the batter. And he goes, this is a guy whose wife had sex with the batter during the seventh inning. Seventh inning stretch. He hits the batter and then he runs after them. They get into a fight.
I liked the third baseman and the catcher when they were running at it and they ran into each other. He's like, we saw these two walking to the ballpark with hookers.
I mean, it was quick and, you know, not as funny as the other looks at books. Again, I feel like we've said for a few sketches, like, it's not horrible.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of us, I think a lot of these comments are coming from us knowing the Steve Martin potential. We know what he delivers in the other dozen plus episodes he does.
Sure.
So there's a lot of prejudice against these early episodes where he's doing it for the first time. And so I just, you know, we now are unfairly comparing it to Theodoric of York and Coneheads and King Tut, and the list will go on and on. So they're all decent sketches. They're just, I think you want these to be mythical Steve Martin sketches, and they're not.
Right.
But
no,
they're better than a lot of other stuff we get. They're better than Norman Lear. They're better than Karen Black.
This is all true, what you say.
It's interesting. I mean, what I'm trying to say is it's just very interesting to watch this person who holds such a high place in the history of Saturday Night Live and the show and what he does. And when you think of him, you think of him as one of the greatest, if not the greatest host. And then to go back and watch episode 1 and you're watching him figure it out.
But I think that's part of this. When you have a show that's almost 50 years old, not every sketch is going to be a winner. No. Not every time a host is on, not every cast member is going to do great on every sketch. So it's like, you know, you take the good with the bad with all of this. And this is not bad by any stretch.
Not at all.
Like, I think to your point, we are comparing it to what hasn't happened yet in real time. Watching this.
Exactly.
And so that's a little unfair. Anyway, that whole looks on books is then a setup to throw to the next Gary Weiss film.
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah.
So this Gary Weiss film starts with Gary Weiss looking out the window, talking about the city that he loves and hates. And then the film is just people on the street in New York lip syncing the song Autumn in New York.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's what it is.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Exactly. It's fine.
It's fine. We've seen much worse from Gary Weiss.
Which I feel for Gary Weiss is a win.
Yeah. I thought you were going to hate this because the song was written in the 30s.
It's fine. Like, it's okay.
Yeah. I just like the idea of walking around New York with a film camera and saying to people, will you say this line?
It's a nice snapshot of New York City in autumn of 76. I mean that genuinely. Like, I dug that of it.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, maybe it could have been ended a little bit smoother or whatever, but, you know, for the idea of what it was, it was kind of cool. The only thing is he does the weird thing where he's on maybe the Staten Island Ferry or something at the end.
What it looked like, yeah.
And he's wearing like a mouse head or rabbit head or something.
I think it's the same that we saw that head, right?
Is that the hamster head? I don't know.
I think it is. I think it's the same head that.
But that was just kind of weird because it felt like the piece in general wasn't playing for laughs, which was fine. It was a fun thing. But then that whole let me do the last verse wearing a hamster mask on my head was kind of odd. But whatever.
Not horrible.
No, that's fine. Again, for Gary Weiss, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. It's never good when you start your segue with a pause and stare at me. But
No. So our next sketch is a spoof of the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first spoof on a contemporary TV show, right?
Jesus Christ, I don't know. Do you think I keep stats? My John Snyder?
Yeah. What else do you do with your time?
Let's not. Too soon. Too fucking soon. Wow.
I
I
don't know. It's fine.
Yeah.
But it's the first instance that I could think of where we were seeing the cast do impressions of characters on TV at the time, not The Honeymooners, not I Love Lucy. It's like a contemporary show where Steve Martin is playing the Ted Knight character and doing a pretty decent Ted Knight impression.
I thought it was a treat. I mean, first of all, I don't know how many people nowadays even remember who Ted Knight is, but I love Ted Knight, and I thoroughly enjoyed Steve Martin doing a pretty damn good Ted Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the highlight to me.
100%. It's like the little laughs, the little things of Ted Knight. It was so,
the way he's
great.
Even holding his shoulders, like he's just like so good.
It's so missed now, but yeah, I did enjoy that.
I did not feel the same about Dan's Murray impression.
That's my first two notes. It is followed up by Gilda's Rhoda is really good.
Amazing.
She's really good. We should we should say Lorraine's Mary Tyler Moore is dead. So we should explain what the sketch is before we talk about everybody.
So she was dead on. Oh. Yeah. So it turns out that Mary is sitting at her typewriter and Steve, as Ted Knight, goes over to talk to her and she doesn't move. And then Murray goes to talk to her and she doesn't move. And they realize Mary is dead.
Why?
Because Ted put Drano in her coffee.
Why?
Because as a joke.
Because he wanted to clean out the pipes.
Yes.
Mary, what's wrong?
Oh, she's probably just depressed because she had to wear the same outfit twice in 1 year.
I don't think Mary's depressed, Ted. I think she's dead.
Come on, Mary, she can't be dead. She's busy. Dead people are never busy.
Oh, God, Ted, how could this have happened?
I don't know, Mary. I mean, she was fine this morning when I put that Trano in her coffee for a joke.
Drano? You put Drano in her coffee?
Well, she was hoarse, and I thought it'd help clean out her pipes. Get it?
That stuff's poison. Don't you read the label?
Yeah, but it got boring.
Mary's dead, and you killed her. Why couldn't it have been the other way around?
Murr, buck up. We'll all laugh about this later.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the whole gag, the whole bit. And then Murray's telling him he has to tell Mr. Grant. And then John comes on as Lou Grant, which I thought was like not great. No. He had a couple of small moments where I was like, is he going to pull it through? No, he didn't. Yeah. And then they're telling Ted that he has to go on air. And basically they did what could have been an episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show if
it felt
they had
like
killed Mary. Oh, you don't like the Mary Tyler Moore Show?
I didn't like it, Gary. We've laughed more talking about this than the audience did watching it.
The audience, to be fair, was not totally into much of this show until the applause sign went on.
I felt they were not getting laughs at all in this sketch.
Yeah.
Aside from the joke where she's dead and Ted Knight has a joke, we should look up her skirt. Like that got a big laugh.
Right.
But other than that, like,
especially at the end, like the end, you could tell they finished and there was a good beat before the applause started.
I mean, part of it was long. I wonder if part of it was, it's interesting. You said it earlier, like this was the first time they've done a contemporary show. I wonder if that kind of threw them, the audience at all, of like not really.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm probably giving it more credit.
Yeah, I just think that it wasn't as funny as the audience wanted it to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it just wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they didn't take it up a notch. You know what I mean? They like,
Yeah.
it could have been an episode of Mary Tyler Moore. It's not like exaggerated in any way, really, except that she's dead.
I blame Dan. I feel like his impression for his Murray could, if he would have went to 11 with him.
With Murray, though?
I don't know.
He's the least of the three, right? Like if you take Ted Knight and Lou Grant and amp them up, then you could make something with this. But they didn't.
I like Steve's Ted Knight. I like Steve's Ted.
Right. But like the interactions between Ted and Lou on the Mary Tyler Moore show are hilarious. And that's what could have. But look, this sketch had promise, but it just didn't follow through, in my opinion.
But again, end of the day, Steve's still really good. This is another sketch where you're watching the host commit. He's not phoning in. He commits, and he's funny.
And he holds that impression the entire time.
He does.
All 7 minutes.
He does. That's a good point. Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah. You don't lose.
Also, friend of the pod, Alan Zweibel was in the background the whole time with his head down in a typewriter.
Yeah,
which I just thought was hilarious.
I think Rosie's in the background there too. Rosie Schuster.
Well, Brad.
Yes. This is where we're going to get to my. If this was on another episode, rationale.
Really?
Sketch. I don't know. Maybe not.
You think if Mysteries in Medicine was on a different episode, it may have been funnier?
No, I don't know.
What do you think it would have been?
Maybe not. No.
Did I just talk you out of that?
You did.
I'm sorry.
Didn't take much. There you go.
So in the Mysteries of Medicine, we see Steve plays Dr. Cone, and then we see Jane come on saying that she needs to lose weight. So he sends her for the blog treatments, and O'Donoghue and Zweibel come back on and grab her and take her off. And like this sketch was the first time this episode, we talked last episode about technical issues in Brooklyn. I was noticing them a lot in this sketch.
You mean the fan that you saw outside the door? I mean, who cares?
Yes.
That's the least of this sketch's problem, but sure.
It's so blatant. But yeah. And now the whole concept behind this blog treatment to lose weight is that they take the dieters to what seems to be the North Pole or something, and they have to fight for food with the native Blog who steals the fish that they catch. And then it turns out that Blog is another doctor, and it's all a ruse.
Dr. Blog, who's watching them on closed circuit TV, so he can see every time they catch fish, and he runs in and steals it. And the theory being, since they can't eat any food because Blog takes it all, they'll lose weight.
They're going to lose weight. Yeah. This was written by Dan, I believe.
It was. This was a Dan sketch, and Dan has a voiceover at the end that blatantly describes exactly what you saw.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really funny. And then I don't know, it must have, I feel like it was purposely done, but the Chiron up after this as they go to commercial is up next, an apology for what came up last.
Yes.
And those two things were really funny. And I mean, I don't know. I think this is an example, a good example of season 2 Saturday Night. This is them still writing just absurd stuff that, when are you ever going to put this on the air? And this will not show up in season 3 or season 4. Like, this is them still writing just stupid, out there, absurd stuff and putting it on.
Yeah.
So, I give credit for that.
Yeah.
I would take this over Mary Tyler Moore sketch.
Huh.
They're different. It's apples and oranges. I understand. But
yeah,
this is different. This is original. This is out there. So if I had to pick between the two, I would take this sketch.
I hear what you're saying. Again, it's something that I'm like, oh, it had the kernels of something that could have been better than I think it turned out to be. That's all.
Maybe. I wouldn't say I quote unquote like it, but I like it. I like that they put it on. I like that they said, fuck it. We're going to put this completely absurd piece on. That's what I like about it.
Well, that leads us to our second monologue from Steve Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's him doing stand-up. Talks about being angry at his mother because she needed to borrow $10 for food. How he met Jackie Onassis in a laundromat in Tucson and took her to lunch. My favorite joke of this, though, was when he was like, I get sentimental whenever there's a bicentennial that comes around.
And then he looks at his watch. I have another month and a half on this joke. I'm going to use as much as I can.
Yeah.
You know why people can get away with stuff like that? I'll tell you exactly why people get away with that. Because the public has a short memory. That's why all these big stars do these crazy, terrible things, and 2 years later they're back in the biz, you know? Because the public has a short memory. Let me give you a little test, okay? This is my thesis. The public has a short memory. And how many people remember a couple of years ago when the Earth blew up? How many people? See? So few people remember. And you would think that something like that people would remember. But no. You don't remember that? The Earth blew up and was completely destroyed. And we escaped to this planet on the giant space ark. Where have you people been? And the government decided not to tell the stupider people because they thought that it might affect. Oh, okay. Let's move on. If I do look a little depressed tonight, I guess I get a little sentimental every time the bicentennial year rolls around. And I got another month and a half on that joke. I'm going to use it every chance I get. So.
Yeah.
Another, classic, Steve Martin monologue.
Were you still upset that the entire restaurant scene from the beatniks sketch was set up behind him, including the candles?
You know what? I noticed the candles and I actually liked it. Now that you mention it,
That's
I'm like,
funny.
That's a nice touch. Okay, I did.
Yeah.
There you go.
And that's it. That's our show.
Yeah. Well, they have the good nights. They come out and Steve says good nights. And they do a funny bit, which I feel was very Steve, where he's looking towards camera saying good night and the entire cast is with him, but they're all looking away from him, away from camera.
Yeah. And waving away.
And they don't mention it. They don't mention it. They don't address it. He just says good night and he starts waving. Everybody else waves. And I thought it was a very funny Steve bit.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it. That was our show.
Overall, I'd say it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, overall, it's not even the worst show of this season yet.
Oh, no.
And we're 5 episodes in, so I think we're good.
You want to like it because it's Steve. Right. But when you look at it, wasn't a lot of meat on this one. Like there's not a lot there. He was good in all of his parts and he played tons of characters. Like he didn't play Steve Martin or variations of Steve Martin. He played characters and that was just fun to watch. Like him getting lost in all the characters in the sketches. And he did 2 monologues as a stand-up, which were really good.
I think, it was just that there were long sketches in this show. And when they don't hit.
Yes, that's the point.
Then that eats up a lot of there was
that beatnik sketch
exactly
went on so long and I feel like it just kind of took the wind out of the episode and there was nothing memorable after that really.
Right.
And it wasn't horrible. There was just, again, because it's Steve Martin and looking at it now, there's a pedestal that he's on.
Right.
But you can see it. It's all there. You can see the ease that Steve Martin has slipping into this show with the cast and just folding in.
It's an interesting comparison that you've been drawing between him and Buck Henry because they are individually such different performers.
Yes.
Yet the way that they fit into they both fit right into the cast. They slide in, they do whatever, they're happy to be there and play whatever role. But even the way the cast treats them is different. Buck is seen as like a more reverential relationship that they have with him. And this is a very casual, like, hey, it's Steve. Yeah. To your point, you see the foundation of what it's going to become. Yeah. And the way he commits, like you said, in every sketch he's in. It's so good. So, yeah, it was a decent show. It wasn't the best, but it certainly wasn't the worst.
No. And if nothing else, it makes you excited to want to see Steve Martin back on the show.
Yeah. Well, Brad, what was your best bit?
Oof. I go with no, I don't. I didn't mean that. I did not mean it that way. Jeopardy 1999. It's a great sketch. Not even taking into account it's the first game show sketch they've done in the history of the show, but it's just so well written. It's so smart. It stands the test of time.
Yeah.
That sadly is it.
I totally agree with you. That was the only one I had.
But like that's an A. That's an A. I give everything else like B-. There's no F's on this episode. Like there's no bombs. There's no that was horrible.
Right.
There's no bombs in this. It's just it's the unfair comparison of what we have to see of Steve Martin.
Right.
That we're taking into account.
Even the Gary Weiss film was decent.
Ooh. Nope that down.
Well, that's it for this show.
Woof. Steve Martin.
Next week, we're going to be talking about season 2, episode 6 with host Buck Henry.
Ooh.
Back for his third turn and musical guest, the band.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.